And this is the Q&A podcast, and I'm your host, Peter Slen. Thanks for joining us. This week, it's a conversation with California Governor and potential presidential candidate, Gavin Newsom. That begins in a moment. Gavin Newsom has been governor of California since 2019. With 40 million people, the state accounts for 12% of the U.S. population, and California's economy alone would be the fifth largest in the world. So what is the impact of a governor on the success or failure of a state? Well, in our conversation with Governor Gavin Newsom, we ask him that question. Governor Newsom is on a book tour for his autobiography, Young Man in a Hurry. We caught up with him in New Hampshire, the site of the first presidential primary. The governor has been mentioned as a potential presidential candidate, and we ask him about that too. Governor Gavin Newsom, we're catching up with you on book tour in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
On book tour, what's one of the stories you like to tell the audience?
This book is not a politician's book. It's not a sanitized version of my life. It's not a 10-point plan for America's renewal. It's an honest reflection of my life and my journey and my parents. It's a love letter to Mom, my single mom. It's a love letter to my dad, my idealistic public servant father that had an outsized role in my life later in life. And it's about mistakes, it's about setbacks, it's about triumphs, it's about growth, it's about persistence. And I think it has something for everybody. And yeah, there's a few interesting stories about Trump.
You've got a complicated family history. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's a little more complicated in the caricature that's out there of my life, which sort of begins as if I was born with a suit and tie and I was a politician. People don't remember those sort of first 25 years of my life, which were marked by a very different relationship with my mom and divorced the father that left her for reasons that I didn't understand until I wrote the book, and raised us with sort of grit and a kind of perseverance that is defined, a lot of not only my childhood and upbringing, but my mindset. And it's a lot of privileges too. I'm not naive about that. Doors were open wide because of my father's relationships. And that created all kinds of opportunities. And that took me in many different directions as a business person with restaurants, hotels, and wineries that I started right out of college, pen to paper, to opportunity to serve on the Parking and Traffic Commission. You only knew if you read the book, Parking and Traffic.
You were offered the Film Commission, I believe, by Willie Brown.
Look at this. This is impressive beyond words. He lied to me. He said, I want you to go on the Film Commission. I'm 20-something years old, and I'd opened a few small businesses, and I thought, this is fantastic. Film Commission. I would love it. Part-time. And then I get sworn in with about 30 other people, and he goes through everybody, and he says, and Gavin Newsom, the next chair of the Parking and Traffic Commission. I literally didn't even know what chair meant. And I'll never forget this little story in there. Chron 4 News was there, and they asked my vision for parking and traffic, and I made some comment about paying my parking tickets and then took off. Inspiration, desperation, the two driving forces of life.
Is that why you call yourself an accidental politician?
In many ways accidental, but then again, I was kind of born and raised in a way that I didn't fully absorb until I wrote this book with that mindset imbued in my earliest days. I never deeply understood my father's episodic interest in being in politics himself. He ran for county supervisor, lost, ran for state senate and lost. That's what led to the divorce. He was broke, and as he said, broke in, and just had a panic attack and left. But my grandfather, and how important, what they called Boss Newsom, old Irish Catholic family in San Francisco, so connected to the political scene. And that all came to life as I absorbed more of his life and learned about it in the book, which explains why I probably didn't have many choices. I thought I did in life. I was the small business guy, but this sort of accident, this fate, getting appointed parking and traffic chair, sort of accidentally led me on that path a lot sooner than I anticipated.
You write that storytelling and drinking from the Newsom side of the family was part of my history.
Yeah, it's a big part. And drinking on all sides. My mom, her father, struggled with alcohol. I was a prisoner of war, marched in Corregidor, came back, different man, ultimately took his own life. But the issue of alcohol plays an outsized role in a lot of generations. And notably on my father's side, for no other reason that it's the old Irish, this is like right out of central casting, these guys. His mom was a heavy drinker, and drinking is where they all came to life. And it's how I got to know my dad. And I don't say it from I never saw him drunk, and I make that point in there, but I never saw him at night necessarily without a drink. And it was just part of the lore, part of the storytelling. He would start to relax, open up with his friends, and he'd start reading from Yeats. He would start doing, he just had an abundance of, he was so well read, and again, storytelling and booze. Irish Catholic, old West Side San Francisco.
Well, Governor Newsom, who is Mimi Silbert?
Mimi is the one that got me straightened out. I made some self-inflicted mistakes that I own up to, and really started to scrutinize in much more detail and sort of perspective of decades in this book. And she famously told me, as mayor, she said, "You will not drink until I tell you to. I don't know if you've got a drinking problem, and if you do, you'll never drink." But it took about a year and a half, and she literally, I'll never forget the day, she goes, "It's okay, you can have a drink." I didn't touch it for a while after because I was nervous. But she's someone that kind of cracked me open when I needed to be cracked open. I needed a pattern interrupt in my life. I had just gotten divorced, and I lost my mom from cancer. I was there for her assisted suicide. And I was here as a young mayor, relatively young mayor, with the bright lights and responsibilities, and frankly, without the kind of maturity at the time, that could handle all of that. And Mimi was the one who really broke that down and made me start to look inward in a way, frankly, I never had. I was just, again, a young guy in a hurry. And I was just always one step ahead from really reflecting on my life, thinking about it, looking in the rearview mirror. It was always about tomorrow. And she really started to paint a picture of my yesterdays.
Was that after your divorce, where you had the affair with somebody who worked for you?
Yeah.
You were out late at the bars regularly at night?
Yeah. It was, I don't know, I was out late, but I was just a single mayor. And I never thought about myself on the mayor side. I just thought I was just a guy out with friends. And I never, until Mimi said, she says, "You're the fucking mayor. Like, people are watching you as the mayor." And I'm thinking, it's 8:39. I just finished 4 events. And, I just want to relax, and never fully absorb that. And again, just this, this happens so fast. I'm the youngest mayor in 100 years. I then get high profile engagement on same-sex marriage. I'm scrutinized and criticized from within. It was not popular within my own city, let alone my own party. And then I have self-doubt, my own anxiety. I've got a marriage that starts to sort of fall apart because my wife at the time, Kimberly, was a young woman in a hurry and ultimately went to work for Fox News in New York. That was not compatible with being first lady of San Francisco. And yeah, you fell into the trap. You fell in the rut. You made stupid decisions. And you paid a huge price for them. And you deserve to pay a price for them. And this is my journey in reflecting on that and understanding what motivated that. Who the hell was I becoming? Put this mask on. My face was going into it. And so I wanted to touch on all that. And when I say touch on it, I do this, I just let it go. I'm who I am. I'm messy. This is not a perfection story, quite the contrary, but it is one of persistence. And to the extent reinforces your loathing towards me, enjoy the book. If it reveals something, some nuances, the cracks that may reveal some light at the end of the day, maybe it's worth the journey to spend a few hours in it.
Well, you call Young Man in a Hurry a resilient California story. What does that mean?
I don't know. I try to paint this. It begins, and I don't want to say it's a memoir, but it has a little literature in there. I try to paint in sort of bold colors, bring the landscape of California. It begins with that landscape as I'm sitting there on a bluff overlooking the American River, where the sound of Eureka was made in gold, and John Marshall, and the memories of floating down that same river with my father, and those memories now that are being born with my son and my family, and how the air there smells of a different scent from the air I grew up in San Francisco, in the Bay and the fog. And so I try to paint that picture. It's California. I'm California. the values, the energy and daring, the blessedness and the curse that is California. It's both and. 27% of our state foreign-born, size of 21 state populations. Managing that labyrinth, managing to understand it, those nuances, the complexities, governing it. Is it manageable? Is it unmanageable? Is it governable? You be the judge.
40 million people, 12% of the U.S. population, fifth largest economy in the world.
Yeah.
Is there an East Coast bias against California?
Well, I think there's a bit of a, dare I say, California derangement syndrome that's pretty present in our politics 24/7. I mean, you think about this state, $4.3 trillion a year economy, it bounces around fourth or fifth largest economy in the world. Probably will be fifth next year because India's on a tear in terms of GDP growth. But we dominate in every category. I mean, you talk about the future, it happens in California first. It's obviously happening in AI, 32 of the top 50 market cap companies, computer, the history of Silicon Valley in relationship to what's happening in quantum, what's happening in robotics, autonomy. You go to San Francisco, half the cars there seem sometimes you're in intersections and there's no drivers anywhere. It's all happening there first. More scientists, engineers, more Nobel laureates, the finest system of higher education, these conveyor belts for talent. I mean, 4 Nobel laureates last year, or just in the UC system alone, more patents than any other public university on planet Earth, and proximity to research and development, talk about daring and energy. And so that's California, more manufacturing jobs in my state than any other state in the country. You talk about farmers, you talk about ranchers, I assume you're talking about California, rural America. You're presumably talking about my home state, $62.1 billion economic output in ag alone, more forestry jobs, more hunting jobs in my state. So it's both and. It's not just a coastal state, quite the contrary. There's almost an elitism about suggesting that because you don't understand how California truly is America, just oftentimes more so.
Is that the message you think may have a national appeal?
I don't know. I struggle with both trying to be defensive about my state and being a little offended that I spend so much time having to be defensive about it. Particularly when we just continue to outperform in so many different categories. We've always had a higher unemployment rate than the rest of the nation. That goes back to when Ronald Reagan was governor. And that is for many different reasons, speaking of hospitality, agriculture, and the nature of the demographics in the state. So there's things that are easily picked off as proof points. Homelessness has been around 30 plus years. We had peak homeless count literally in 2004. It dropped 9% last year. It was the first time in 15 years we actually saw a reduction. But the issue that is the issue that's the fairest critique is the cost of housing, which explains more things in more ways on more days, of the struggles of middle-class Californians. We simply have been dumb as we want to be in our incapacity to build enough housing. NIMBYism has reigned supreme for a generation in California. It's supply demand. It's not complicated. And finally, after years of struggle, we did some, just forgive the vernacular, smash mouth housing and land use reforms that even got some more critics like Ezra Klein to applaud and celebrate, saying, finally, a liberalism that one day might build.
What about the issue of income disparity? The haves in California love California.
Yeah. Well, that's why I focus on wages. $25 minimum wage, the highest in the nation for healthcare workers. $20 minimum wage for fast food workers. Very controversial. I was criticized. I'm proud of that. That's why the earned income tax credit, that's $1.2 billion, created new child savings accounts. These Trump accounts, we did that 6 years ago, up to $1,500, 5.5 million eligible students that have those accounts. We expanded paid family leave. We expanded paid sick days. We're lowering costs, $11 insulin. We're not subsidizing, we're lowering it. Almost 400,000 childcare slots expanded. I mean, we talk about childcare expansion. I assume you're talking about California. Still have more to do. Pre-K for all, brand new grade we created to lower the cost for families. So we're looking at all those areas where we can make improvements to address those disparities. But productivity and wages are higher in our state, but obviously the cost of living is higher still. And that's the stress point and has been for decades. And we're constantly battling that as we continue to battle across this country and address the issue of not just income inequality, but wealth gaps.
Somebody who plays a regular role in your book, Young Man in a Hurry, is Hillary. Who is Hillary?
I love that. Not Clinton, though. She's a friend, and she would be in the book. But my sister, Hillary, a rock star and a rock. And where I put my mask on, she made sure that my face didn't grow completely into it. She always was there to sort of pull me back. She was always there to set me straight, to call me out, and she calls me out plenty in this book. A lot of these dumb decisions I made, or a photo shoot I shouldn't have done, that played right to type and only reinforced people's angst towards me. And she would just, she would read me the riot act. But she was there for my mom to her last breath. She was there taking care. Literally, my dad moved in to her little backyard unit in Marin near the end. And she was just that person. I can always count on her to take care of everybody, including taking care of me. How blessed am I?
When you write about President Trump in here, you say that we're different. He's East Coast. I'm West Coast.
Yeah.
He came from wealth. I was around wealth.
Very proximate for me.
What does that mean?
That's back to when I said those doors open. The privileges, I'm well established. I was appointed, after all, to the Parking and Traffic Commission. Now, I get to do appointments now, so I appreciate that opportunity. You have to add some value in that, but I'm not naive about that. And nor was I naive about the relationship I had to a number of wealthy people, notably the Getty family, my father's best friend growing up. And as they grew up, their wealth.
Gordon and Ann Getty?
Gordon and Ann Getty. And my dad was close to Paul Getty and Gordon. Paul eventually moved to London. And there's some interesting stories. It's talk about tragedies and triumphs, the history of the Getty family.
Two I wanted to ask you about. You knew John Paul Getty, who was kidnapped in Italy in 1973.
My dad's godson. And Paul, whose ear was cut off in that kidnapping. And his father, J. Paul Getty, at the time, the first billionaire in the world, at the time, quite literally, not in adjusted dollars, but actual dollars, refused at the beginning to pay the ransom. And ultimately did pay the ransom up to the tax-deductible rate, which is an interesting part of the story. But did not do so until the ear arrived in the mail a bit late because there was a postal strike. And Paul is lucky to be alive today because they had a demand letter saying you'll get back on this date. Luckily, they gave some grace. But there's a story in there. My father's godson arriving back from the kidnapping. My father was part of all of that, getting him back.
He went to Rome.
He was there in Rome, Via Veneto, La Dolce Vita, all the time. And there's some wonderful little stories in that space as well. But Paul came back. He's a young man, and there's a story of my dad driving Paul, who was relatively young, and his two kids, my sister and I. And he said to me before, and to my sister, please, whatever else you do, when Paul gets here, don't bring up his ear. Don't mention his ear. And we're like, fine, we're good. So we're sitting in the back of the car, Paul's sitting in the front, and my sister is just staring like this. The little girl staring, is going like this, ear. And then goes to Paul and goes, Paul, how many ears do you have? And it's just this great story of my father, complete panic, and Paul casually said his ear was punched in, it's hidden, it's hiding, to the relief of my father. But it was the first vivid memory for me of the relationship my dad had to the family that ultimately inured to a relationship that I eventually had with the family and business relationship, even to this day. I've started a lot of businesses, and some members of the family, notably Gordon, has been one of my consistent investors, and I'm so blessed. And I'm never going to run away from that, but nor do I want to run away from the other side. And that's what this is about. That story's been told about me. You know, the gel, the suits. I'm glad I'm not wearing one now. But that
you
other
wore
side,
one in high school.
Because I was trying to be someone. I was so insecure. I was so broken. As a kid who couldn't read, write, quite literally when I say couldn't read or write. I still don't read speeches because I can't. I get mocked by the folks on Fox in that way. So it's reality, and so I struggle with it. You don't get rid of dyslexia. You overcompensate for it, but then you discover all these other things, and that's for business. I discovered. I'm like, wow, this is, taking risks. I'm selling wine at retail in a restaurant. No one else had done that. Did a screw cap wine and a $100 bottle of wine. They said, no one's done that. It's part of the iteration. And I saw it in same-sex marriage and my social media. I tend to lean in a little bit. I'll take the arrows in the back. That's what a dyslexic does. There's a creativity that forms and the ability then to feel a room, to see a room. And that's a gift when you have to give a speech, because if you're stuck on a lousy script and people aren't buying it, that's not going to go well. So it's harder, but it also gives you more flexibility. And, some ways I'm here because of it. But it is a hell of a profession to choose when you can't read a speech, politics.
And C-SPAN's Q&A podcast continues in a moment. What I learned in the book was that you're related by marriage to Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, well, it's a little indirect, but my uncle, Ron Pelosi, is Nancy's brother-in-law. And so her nieces and nephews are a few of my cousins. And so Nancy, Paul Pelosi, was a major fixture because of Ron, his brother, and a big part of my life. And so, yeah, back to this, I didn't have a lot of choice, did I, in politics, particularly San Francisco politics, where she's so enshrined in the Brown Pelosi-Burton machine, as they called it, which legitimately, I know you have those East Coast versions.
Governor, who were the Burtons? Because they are infamous for California politics.
Well, you got to, I've been very... Phil Burton is, you want to talk about redistricting. He reinforced the art. I mean, I wish I could remember. There is a great quote about Phil and redistricting, some absurd district map that Phil had invented. And they said it actually doesn't work because the ocean ends here. And he made some comment, no, not during high tide or something, or low tide. I mean, these guys these were the masters of the day. And they were the master builders of the party and the political machine that is so much of the folklore of California politics. Willie Brown ultimately became Speaker of the legislature, and they couldn't get rid of him. The Republicans took over the majority, and they still couldn't get rid of Willie Brown. He made a deal with them, and so the voters had to get rid of him with term limits. And that's when he ended up being mayor. And that's the story, my origin story of how I ended up being parking and traffic commissioner, through term limits. These guys, they were old friends and pals of my dad. And it was always, there was always a cause. I was licking envelopes, 1-800-JERRY BROWN back in the day. It was always a cause. Yeah, you got to participate. You got to volunteer. It could be an environmental cause. It could be, social justice, racial justice. But politics, I never knew I'd be in politics, but I knew I would always want to be around it and participate in it in some respect.
When you entered politics, you say that it was to the everlasting disappointment of your mother and the everlasting satisfaction to your father.
Well, my mom up into her dying days, was really concerned that I was going to run for mayor and wanted me out of politics. She was a little disappointed I was a county supervisor. And I never understood it. I never got the why. I'm like, why didn't you? And she really vehement up until literally hours before her death. I was there for her last breath, this assisted suicide. And she just warned me against it. By the way, when my recall petition finally officially was announced, I thought about her. I thought maybe she was right. And there were other moments, given any given day in this racket, where I'm like, oh God, my mom, maybe she was right. But I didn't understand it until I learned in this book that the reason my dad left, again, was he ran for office twice and lost and disappeared. And that politics ended the marriage. And she also understood, because all this time, my marriage was starting to end, near the end of her life. And she saw that.
Your first marriage.
Yeah. And so that was all unraveling. And so it was with grace she said that. I had a little animus towards that. I'm like, why? But of course, my father, when I became county supervisor, that was his first dream, 1967. He lost. And here I am, county supervisor. Then, oh my gosh, mayor? Then he gets upset. I almost gave it all away. I'm doing same-sex marriage, where he tried to talk me out of that, saying, why are you screwing this up? You just got it, kid. Be careful. This won't last very long. But he was there, and this book ends. It's not a book about my governorship. It's got an epilogue that talks about a transition and some great stories with Trump, including on Marine One, Air Force One. But it ends with, basically through my father surviving long enough. He died of cancer as well, just long enough to see his son get elected. Not sworn in, but elected governor. And as he would do with sort of a Jackie Gleason thing, oh, how sweet it is.
Governor Newsom, the first time you met Donald Trump was during a fire in California, correct?
Seems a most blessed, most cursed state in America, paradise. Otherwise referred to by Trump as pleasure, where he asserted we needed to rake our forests. Hats were produced, make America rake again, but I digress. This fire in a very conservative part of our state was one of the most devastating. 85 lives lost, 16,000 structures. And I had just gotten elected, and I was in the transition. And surprise, they called and said governor-elect should join the trip with the president. And I was hitting him, he was hitting me, he was certainly hitting Jerry Brown. Called Jerry Brown a clown. He said he wasn't going to give them any, even back in the day, no disaster money, because Jerry Brown, of course, wasn't raking the forest. And so I inherited a lot of that. But what I also inherited was an understanding of how he works and the motivations he has, and sort of this, how he's just the need to be loved and to be appreciated, and the interpersonal side of him, which really helped us get through COVID. It allowed me to pick up the phone, make calls, vice versa, and we had an extraordinarily good relationship. And you can go back and roll the tape of me and him both saying the same thing about how curiously well we worked together during the whole COVID crisis. Lately, not so much.
But on a personal level, you write that, frankly, you were seduced.
He was,
in a sense.
He's seductive. He's so solicit. He wants to pull you in. I mean, so much so
Isn't that a good politician?
It's an enduring quality as a human being. And people know this, and a lot of folks get in trouble, particularly if you're a member of my political tribe, for saying anything positive about Donald Trump. But the interpersonal side, I was with him 90 minutes in the Oval Office. I was the first Democratic governor to visit him. I mean, it's 90 minutes. Both of us were like, how have we been here this long? And it was just this banter. It's a banter. It's back and forth. And you just roll with it. And he's testing you. He's testing boundaries. And so once you figure that out and you're a little less stiff and you're loose, then you have the ability, it's a little bit of jazz with him. And I described some of those conversations, and some that were a little bit more pointed and more personal, a little bit more acerbic and pointed towards Kushner as well, where he's talking about Kushner not being his first choice for his son-in-law.
Tom Brady.
Which most folks reading would probably go, well, I get the Tom Brady point. But it's a hell of a thing to say in front of your son-in-law, in Marine One. But anyway, there's some fun stories in there. And yeah, the personal allowed us to at least work together, open hand, not a closed fist. This is why I went out there on the tarmac after the fires in LA. Again, the bookmark of those fires, and that's the epilogue in here. How I began that relationship, and how through those fires was rekindled, literally, not just figuratively. But of course, after the federalization of the National Guard, 700 active duty Marines sent to my city. It's a red line. And unfortunately, he crossed it. And now I'm drawing the line.
When's the last time you talked to him?
It was, ironically and interestingly, you can't make this up, in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum.
Davos.
I was walking in to watch his speech, and I hear a voice, and I'm literally walking. I'm like, and I literally went, oh, you gotta be kidding. And it was Trump. And he's like, hey, Gavin. And he goes, in front of everyone, we used to go, what the hell happened? We used to get along. The whole thing, the whole shtick was back. He's like, this is great. You're going to be great. And then he goes out and says something nice about me. And of course, I go out and I was ready to bear. Like, what the hell's going on with Greenland? This is madness. He wasn't too pleased with that. But that's the nature of our relationship. But of course, what really marked the last substantive conversation was the night before he federalized the Guard, where we had a 17-minute conversation that basically went like this. Hey, Gavin, yeah, thanks. It was 1:30 in the morning. Mar-a-Lago goes, hey, I thought he was talking about LA and some of the issues. And he goes, hey, what do you think of New Scum? What do you think of the nickname New Scum? I was like, he goes, it's pretty original, right? I said, no, it's not original. I literally had written in the book.
In high school?
In high school, I said, there's a guy in like 8th grade that did this, not an 80-year-old that called me in. And then he goes, what do you think of MAGA? Okay, MAGA. I'm like, and I said, Mr. President, are we seriously having this conversation? He goes, MAGA's pretty good. I said, that wasn't, and I told him it wasn't original. I said, Reagan used it, Meg Whitman ran for governor, make California. And then he cuts me out, goes, how many hats do you think I sold? I'm like, it is 1:30 in the morning. It's 10:30, I got to get to bed. And he saw the hat, and then he's like, then he says, hey, what do you think of the debate with Kamala? I'm like, okay, I said, she crushed you. She goes, no, she didn't. And he goes, it was 4 against 1. I said, there were only 2 moderators. She goes, well, the cameraman. This is the shtick. This is the conversation. The next morning I wake up, or that afternoon, and Truth Social, he said, he read Newsom the Riot Act. I'm like, what? The conversation ended like, this was great, call me anytime. Read me the Riot Act, and then federalizes the guard. You're just dealing with something different. And all of us have to, Mom Dummy's gonna learn that. Everybody, it's hard. You can't work with them. You can only work for them. And everybody ultimately learns that lesson. Everybody. And it's a difficult one. European allies have learned that lesson. NATO allies. Carney certainly has learned that lesson. Everybody. And the Republican parties learned that lesson. And, I had the privilege of having a little more experience with them than most. And again, I'm not looking to put a, spoke in the wheel, in his wheel to trip him up. A crowbar. I want to, we all need to work together, but it's very difficult at this moment.
He is probably the most accessible president of the 20th century.
Alarmingly
every
so.
day. Are you that accessible to the press?
I have a pretty good relationship. I mean, some difficult moments, most certainly, but nothing like this. No, he has an insatiable appetite. He doesn't care if he's the heel or the hero. He has to be the star, the bright lights. So he can't help himself. I describe in the book, going on Air Force One, going in the bedroom with him. He's petting the side of the plane, how beautiful the plane is. And then he grabs me because he just had to go show me off. And we had to do a press conference in the back of Air Force One together. He just can't help himself. He's so absorbed with that. The opening scene of Air Force One is him turning on Fox just to see how we looked during the press conference at the fires. He didn't even want the sound on. He just like, it was choreographed. He goes, it looked pretty good. I'm like, you can't make this up.
He's been elected president twice.
Got elected
He's got
twice.
something.
He is remarkable. His ability to dominate the narrative, to flood the zone, is a skill at the next level. But he's a carny of sorts. He's a flim-flammer. He's the music man. And gigs up a little bit. He's also in retreat. He's struggling now. He's flailing. And you see that everywhere. He's in retreat, not just in Minnesota and Greenland. You see it. Even his policies are in retreat as relates to tariffs and his mass deportations. Obviously, Noam's gone. He's struggling now to figure this out. And so the emperor's, he's getting exposed in a way that he's not used to. He doesn't have COVID this time, is the excuse. And so this is going to be a lot of white water in the next 3 years. This is going to be a hell of a journey that we go on together in this country in the next 3 years. One
topical question. You have said that Iran should not have nuclear weapons, no way, no how. And you have said that we should look at our relationship with Israel.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile those? Or
no,
how do you put those together?
It's more on the conditional as it relates to funding. I talked about it tonight in terms of my relationship to Israel. I was there right after the 7th. I visited not only the president, but Bibi after the terrorist attack, met with those survivors, those victims of that horrific night. I also came as the only governor, I think, in the country with a field hospital that we had packed up for the Israelis. I visited there. I love the state of Israel. I just don't like the state of play with the current administration, Bibi. I can love Israel, but I'm not a supporter of Bibi. I'm not a supporter of the direction he's going as it relates to the annexation of the West Bank. And I think there is a point, and Tom Friedman and others have written about this, if that's the direction he's going to take us, I think as an American citizen, is that the direction that we embrace and we want to celebrate with our tax dollars? I'm going to have their back, but I think there has to be. I mean, Donald Trump is conditioning aid for fire victims and recovery. I mean, you would think if we're going to use our resources overseas, we would have policies that may support, I believe, two-state solution that wouldn't necessarily support the kind of promotion and policies that Bibi and the hardliners are currently promoting. So yeah, I'm happy the Supreme Leader's dead. Good riddance. I understand deeply there's no larger Iranian diaspora than the state of California why people were celebrating in the streets. The tyrannical reign of 37 years for the particular Supreme Leader, 47 overall. But this war concerns me. This now is a regional war. Allies are mistakenly shooting down American jets. We had the first casualty, one of the 6, lives in our backyard in Sacramento, California, a poor soul younger than me, whose life is lost. It's still, what was the imminent threat? What is the end game here? It's Keystone Cops, listening to Hegseth one day and listening to Rubio the next, listening to Trump one afternoon to late afternoon, coming up with some new justification. And so I'm very concerned about that. So that was the flavor of my comments. I was reflecting again on a pretty tough piece that Tom Friedman wrote, particularly about the direction that they seem to be going, Bibi, with the annexation.
40 million people, 12% of the U.S. population, 4th or 5th largest economy in the world,
Yes,
standing
sir.
alone. Do world leaders reach out to you?
It's been extraordinary and humbling. Not only that, they promote when they're with me, as Chancellor of Germany did, and Prime Minister of Spain in Munich a week ago. The Trump administration was none too pleased. I'm blessed. Look, when I have more MOUs. I mean, I was with President Xi directly. When folks weren't out there reaching out, back to this notion divorce is not an option. And so I've had the privilege, back to being mayor. So many people come to Silicon Valley, they drop in, say hello. So I've had these long established relationships with a lot of world leaders, and I've been developing them even more in the last 6 to 9 months, particularly with some travels recently, including in the UK, but also because they're all so concerned about what is happening in our country. Again, you can love America and not support the current occupant in the White House. And these folks love our country, but boy, are they talking behind this guy's back in a pretty profound and outsized way. Not the ones I mentioned. I'm not here to create any international issues, but so many others. And we're blessed to be a stable and reliable partner on low carbon green growth, stable and reliable partner as the largest state, #1 in direct foreign investment, #1 in two-way trade. 40% of the world's goods movements come in Long Beach and in LA. We're profoundly consequential in that respect. And that's why I'm so blessed to have the relationship with many world leaders.
A lot of personal stuff in this book, Young Man in a Hurry. Jen Siebel, you talk about Harvey Weinstein, the death of her sister,
Ooh, yeah.
and an ended pregnancy at the age of 46.
Yeah, she wanted, and she,
Do we need to know all that stuff?
She wanted, to know me is to know my wife. To know my wife is to know those horrific instances that shaped her life. To know her why she's a fierce advocate for women and girls, why she's a first advocate for survivors of sexual assault, and why she testified and had the courage to testify in the Weinstein trial, and to see the disgraceful behavior of his defense attorney trying to shame her to go after me and what happens to women, but she still had the courage to do it. I thought that was important. And having lost her best friend, her older sister, in a tragic accident in which she blamed herself, and then to have lost a child, all of that connected dots that connect this moment, our relationship, and my time as it relates to the decisions I will make in the future that is completely attached to my 4 kids and what they represent to the two, to Jen and I.
Are you still a practicing Roman Catholic?
I've turned into my father. He every morning, this is back in the day, every morning went to church. Every day they went to church. He then started to describe himself being a Catholic of a distant kind. I've become a bit like that. I went to some Catholic schools, Notre Dame de Victoire.
Got married, first marriage in a Catholic church.
In a Catholic church. And, so I would go, quarterly. Then I would go, and I became the, all right, Easter and Christmas, midnight mass version of Christmas. Nah, not midnight mass this year. So I'm that. But, I also.
You miss it?
I miss it. Come on. When I was with Pope Francis on a climate conference, and he leaned over me and he goes, "Are you the one that did a moratorium on the death penalty?" I started crying. It was like just overwhelming. That's the connection you always have with the church. I can't help. You always have those private prayers. That's who I am. It's my kids are baptized. It's important to me. It's faith. It's a spirit. Maybe God, Jesus. It's not to, I periodically read the Bible, and I wonder if some of the folks on the other side of the political aisle ever have. The Jesus they're representing is not the one that was represented with Father Cause at Santa Clara University. We're many parts, but one body. When one part suffers, we all suffer. That's my connection to faith, but it's not the practicing version of my father's, and nor even of my childhood.
Governor Newsom, let's end where we started, which is we are in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, on a book tour. Is it ironic that the governor of California is in New Hampshire on a book tour? Should we read anything into that?
Well, wait, you forgot that I was in Nevada earlier today.
You're going to Iowa, South Carolina?
I don't know, it just all seems coincidental, doesn't it? I was in South Carolina last week. I was in Atlanta.
What should we read into that?
I just want to be out there. I want to be, two things. One, you can cynically look at all that as people are, as they're watching. And that's understandable. This book was supposed to come out years ago. This was delayed. It actually was promoted and announced this time last year after being delayed. Yes. So the book is not timed in this respect. But my time's limited. I got a sell-by date. I got 10 months. And I think people have seen a shift in me in terms of my attitude, my approach, a little bit more vigorous, a little bit more aggressive with Trump and Trumpism. Prop 50 was not just style, it was substance as it relates to fighting back, fighting fire with fire, redistricting. And so I'm trying to take that message on the road everywhere. It's not just these classical states that are defined so much of the, the folklore in American politics, but a lot of red states. And I'm here to try to continue to remind people they matter. That they show up, they're not just showing up for themselves, they're showing up for the rest of us. The No Kings rallies, people in Minnesota, the Steel Spine. I'm there to absorb that, to thank them. Love this country. 250th anniversary, this historic project. We could lose this republic. This guy is, tried to wreck this country, thinks democracy's for suckers. He really does. It's not the rule of law, it's the rule of dawn. Might makes right, the law of the jungle. He doesn't believe in co-equal branches of government. I'm not sure he believes in popular sovereignty. I'm not sure we'll have a fair and free election if we don't win back the House of Representatives this year. I believe that, I really do. That's not, to me, hyperbolic, and I can give receipts to back that up, that belief system. So that's why I'm truly out here. But yes, it's nice to come, have a sold out crowd, say hello to some remarkably smart, insightful, sometimes even, cynical guests, and see how the reaction is. And I've enjoyed the time here and looking forward to being at Jesse Jackson's memorial tomorrow morning and absorbing even more of our great history.
The book is called Young Man in a Hurry, a memoir of discovery. The author, California Governor Gavin Newsom. We appreciate your spending some time with us here on C-SPAN.
My honor. Thank you.
Prior to this interview, Governor Newsom talked about his book at the Historic Theater in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Here's a portion of that event.
You talk about, and I'm going to have to do a little moment of rehashing some of the early Gavin years journalism here. This may be, Jesse Waters may bring this up later tonight, so I may get you in trouble with this, because there's one part of the book, because you talked about overcoming dyslexia, working through that, kind of what helped you find yourself with sports. Talk about how baseball saved you, basketball certainly being part of that. And I came to, I think it was page 74. And so once you get the book, go to page 74. I don't know if, don't quote me on it exactly, we'll find it out. He's talking about your basketball career. And I am a guy who played a little basketball. And I just have to bring up the fact that there's one thing in this book that I really don't trust. You said your senior year, you averaged 19 points and 14 rebounds.
That's what I'm talking about, 14 rebounds.
And I don't know how you're governor and then not in the league.
I'm telling you. Come on.
You got some size, you got a frame, a little Moses Malone, some Charles Barkley. What's going on, man?
Marin County Athletic League. So let's put it in perspective for anyone that knows. We're a little softer, okay?
Are you playing against plumbers? Is that what it was?
No, it's just, I think, what's that old French poem says? He only appears eminent because of the flatness of the surrounding terrain. That may be best to describe my basketball career, but it.
Well, then on that, I played a little basketball, and I kind of want to see this rebounding technique.
No, but come on, yeah, you always.
I need to see.
That's just you got to use whatever. Are you serious? Is this like what? Are you like working some viral moment? That's like Jimmy Kimmel the other night. I got this Peace Prize. What do you got?
So it's
that's just like that, you got to use it. You got to know. You got to get the. Come on, man. I'm Draymond Green.
What do we do with the elbow? Show me the elbow.
No, well, you knock the hell out of your opponent. That's what you do. Sharp elbows. We need more of that in the Democratic Party. Yeah, yeah. But no, it was sports. But that's what ultimately got me out of my shell, and I became just got a little better every single year, and worked my way from right field. Anyone knows Little League, right field, and eventually made it to first base. It's huge, it's metamorphosis. But it ultimately led me to get a miniature partial scholarship that got me into a 4-year college. Again, SAT score was not my ticket into a 4-year college. My academic career, you don't have to do op research on me, folks. I put it all out there.
Is it 1520? Right, is what you landed
yeah,
there?
I think it's 960, trust me. And which my sister always reminds me. And so it literally, you're able to, that's why, I know some people dismiss sports and that's not, but I love it because the one last thing that unifies us, except Trump, is just try to take it all over. You saw today, by the way, he's building a 100,000 seat stadium for a UFC fight that he says he's building. That's what he was talking about today.
I thought Republicans wanted to get sports and politics and separate them. So it's just when it works out for them, they're happy to inject themselves in sports.
I was just so pleased he went out there for that Super Bowl. But, I would have enjoyed that with Bad Bunny, but that's a whole nother aside. That would have been a very different kind of Super Bowl halftime show. But so for me, that was, it was a big part of, dominant part of my life. And one of the just to give you the character of my mom, we kind of were latchkey kids. And, as I said, she was doing part-time bookkeeping. She was part-time waitress. And she was doing work at I Magnum's, buyer there. And working for Aid to Adoption of Special Kids, kids with intellectual and physical disabilities and all these side jobs. And so she was, my dad was distant in those early days, but she was there as much as she could. And I remember one Little League game where sadly I played the whole game. And so, first time at bat, swung and missed. Second time, swung and missed. Third time, strike 3. Went up to plate 2 more times, struck out 3 times, just devastated. And Joe Wagner Field in Larkspur, California. And I remember my mom watched the end of the game, and I'm quitting. I'm done. I hate this. The worst thing. Why do you make me do this? The whole thing. And she grabbed a box of balls, and she went back out a couple hours later. No one was on the field. We lived nearby. And she started throwing batting practice to me. And I never realized at the time, it was a lesson in life. It was about resilience, and it was about grit. And so all these memories, all these stories that I just, and I never, I also wrote about being with her on her last breath. These are things I never told her. I never said I love you. I never did. I was this young man in a hurry, and constantly just focused on me, my learning disability, my struggle. Never understood what she was going through. We always had roommates. I write about waking up and all of a sudden there's 2 people living in her bedroom because she's now in the living room because she's just hustling, making ends meet. We were a foster family growing up. Suleiman and a lot of these amazing young men that came into our lives because of my mom and her hard work and grit. But I was there with her many years ago. And this is one of the privileges of public service, is fast forward. I'll get to that. When she called me, she leaves a voice message, says, "Hi, honey, it's your mom." And literally. And she goes, "Next Thursday will be the last day you'll be able to see me. You may want to check in before then." A literal voice message. I'm running around. I've got a few little businesses. I opened a little restaurant and wine store, and I'm doing my thing. I wasn't paying much attention to her. She had breast cancer. It came back. She overcame it the first time. I kind of took that for granted. I'm doing my thing. I immediately do what anyone would do in a voicemail. I call my sister. I'm like, "What is going on?" She goes, "You need to get over now." Went home, and my mom said she was going to do an assisted suicide. And I didn't realize how much pain she was in. And she found a courageous doctor. It was illegal in California. And I know good people can disagree on this, and I deeply respect people that do not approve of this. But I can't thank that doctor enough for having the courage and being willing to lose his license to help her get through this misery. And in order to help her, my sister and I were the last two with her. And the doctor came in, did the doses, and there's a process. And I don't know if any of you have ever done this. God bless you if you have. Nothing about it is romantic. It's not like the credits on a movie, and it's like, this is like traumatizing. And it was so bad, my sister just, as she was having a hard time breathing, she looked at me. We're holding hands on both sides of her, and my sister just takes off and runs out. I'm like, "It's okay, go." And I didn't know what to do, and because I said I'd be there. And I was holding her hand in those last sort of desperate breaths. And we had pleasantries, niceties. And then I sat there for 20 minutes afterwards, my head on her stomach, saying out loud all the things I didn't have the guts to tell her just 20 minutes earlier. And you think about, just not dreaming of regretting and all that. And again, to the motivation. This book was not supposed to come out this year. This was supposed to come out a couple years ago. I know everybody, I'm in New Hampshire. This story writes itself. There's no way you're going to believe this.
Something could happen.
But yeah, but it's back to this. It's just it's for my kids. I literally dedicate it. Say, my 4 beautiful kids, so you can continue the story. But it's a love letter to those that raise us and to those remarkable people. And, I learned that my mom, she, when she was a kid, her dad put a gun to her head in a raging fireplace, threatening to kill her. He came back from Korea. He spent almost 3.5 years as a prisoner of war, and he came back broken, raging alcoholic, ultimately committed suicide himself. Threatened my mom as a young child, all this stuff. I didn't know any of this. And it explains so many things in so many ways of who I am today and how this echoes generation, how everything is shape-shifted. And so again, it's been a powerful and a cathartic process. And I know many of you have struggles much more challenging, much more interesting, but it's really important and so motivating, I think, to really start to understand who you are in a deeper and richer way by relating to those, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, to their stories and their lives, and trying to do justice to bring their lives to print as well, because I don't want them to be in peril, to be judged not to have lived. And so this has it's meaningful for me, and it's meaningful for me that many of you are here tonight as well. Thank you.
And it's really, I think, in a lot of the interviews and conversations you've had around the book, sparked the feelings of you kind of reflecting back now on yourself, thinking about kind of how we opened, talking about your kids and how you view your relationship with them in kind of relation to your relationship with your father. And you talked about how one of your sons texted you about the prospect of, has anyone asked you if you're going to run for president at any point? Has anyone done that? But saying, like, Dad, you can't run for president. Like, we need to spend a little bit more time together.
Yeah, no, this was a few months ago. I naively did what you're not supposed to do, and that was answered a question directly. Because Bob Costas, where he did some CBS Sunday morning thing about 6 months ago, he tried to ask me to run for president, and I was like, come on, let's talk about something else. And then he says, okay, have you ever thought about it? I'm like, okay, I've thought about it. So, it was a passing point. And then, of course, the headlines, Newsom considers run. Newsom poised for run. Newsom prepares for 2028.
Let's get into that a little bit more right now.
And I'm reading all this, my staff is all upset, and my son. And so I've got this, he's a little version of me, man, little shit. Excuse my language, right? He's a little young man in a hurry, and we're like, okay, buddy, striking that pose, trying to figure himself out. And I didn't know he had this in him, and it really hit me, and that's why I talked about it the other day, and I appreciate you bringing it up. He texts me, says, Dad, I hear you're running. I said, I'm not running. That's crazy. And he goes, I hope you don't. And then I'm like, why? I said, well, never would do that without a decision. He goes, I hope you don't because I'm too young and you need to spend more time with us. And he's 14, and that's not how 14-year-olds talk. And it was like, and I remember, I screenshot, I wish I had my phone right now. And that's like, that hits you in a different place. And this is a story, again, when I had my first kid, Montana, and I had this unbelievable rock star wife. And, she was probably, and thank you, but she was like, am I marrying your dad? Who came back in my life and got to know Jen, and he was incredible. And I don't want to paint it, and he's a beautiful character in here. He's my social justice, racial justice, economic justice guy. He's the Sarge Shriver in my life, not just the Bobby Kennedy. He's my motivation in terms of so much of what I'm trying to do in my day job every day. But she didn't know, and so and I write a lot about that. And I also am very honest. I had a marriage that didn't go well. And you may have read.
What is Kimberly up to these days?
She's no longer engaged to Trump Jr. But that alone that's worth a book. You can't make that one up.
And what would the title be of this?
Yeah, I don't. But she was a young woman in a hurry. And, I want to only speak positively.
You think the best is still yet to come? Or is that you?
At least it was memorable. But so my wife's who comes from an unbelievable family, just a rock star dad who literally retired early to raise the kids, and it was their basketball coach, their tennis coach, was that kind of person. And here I am, then work out, my own divorce, parents, and that is an aside, but when we had our first child, that was the real stress test, and I didn't know. I'm like, my dad I always felt a little abandoned, right? You're like, he didn't love me. I always knew he did the older I got, but when you're a child, you don't feel that. And so I just remember when my daughter Montana was born, and you don't know. You'll be like, oh, nice, thank you. And it was like this, I know when people talk about, all my West Coast friends talk about light and love, and I'm like, oh God, okay, yeah, I know. And we're all gonna go to Chez Panisse and go have some, organic, whatever. And I'm like, light and love, like this sort of just this weight from head to heart, in a way like a baritone. And thank God. And so for me, I can't screw that up, these 4 kids. I can't screw it up with Jen, and there's nothing more challenging. That's why just grace, no matter you're Democrat, Republican, just grace with young kids, and just in their own journey, in their own relationship to their parents in this business. But that text has an outsized influence on any question about the future.
Thanks for joining us on the Q&A podcast. Next week, we talk with Lee Bollinger, the longtime president of Columbia University, about his 20 years in office and his new book, University: A Reckoning.